Beloveds, we gather today on a day that's often remembered with some familiar words of dream and hope, unity. Words that are true, even as they are incomplete. Because the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not only about inspiration, it was about transformation. Not only about inclusion, but about justice. Not only about love as a feeling, but love as public, moral, and costly commitments. Dr. King preached in churches. He organized from churches. And he called the church again and again to be something braver than polite, something truer than neutral, and more faithful than comfortable. And so it feels right, even necessary, that on this weekend we reflect together on what it means to practice radical welcome. Not as a slogan, not as a personality trait, but as a theology. You see, there's a version of Dr. King that is the safe and familiar. A king who dreamed but didn't disrupt. A king who spoke of love, not of conflict. Who called us to kindness and not accountability. But that is not the king who was surveilled by the FBI. That was not the king who was jailed, threatened, and eventually killed. That is not the king who warned us about racism and militarism and materialism as intertwined evils. You see, that was the real balance. He preached a faith that was demanding change. Change of systems, of institutions, and of people, including the people of goodwill. People in the pews. If you didn't know, he preached these words often to us as Unitarian Universalists. And maybe, most especially, to us. In Unitarian Universalist communities, we talk a lot about welcome. We value it, and we should. Greeters at the door, smiles and open arms, words that say, you belong here. But radical welcome is not hospitality. Let that sink in for a moment. I mean, when I say radical welcome, we are not talking about hospitality. Because hospitality asks, are you comfortable? But radical welcome asks, who's missing and why? Hospitality says, come on in. But radical welcome says, how might we make changes to make room for you? Hospitality can be polite, but radical welcome becomes disruptive because belonging always changes the shape of community. It's not about who feels at ease as they arrive. It's not who is already here even, although I have other thoughts about that. It's about who no longer has to prove their worth to stay. Dr. King often spoke of radical hospitality as beloved community, not a utopia, not a fantasy, but a vision of society rooted in justice, equity, and love, where the well-being of each person was bound up in the well-being of all people. This is not optional belonging. It's not selective compassion. This is a shared fate. King taught us that Injustice anywhere threatens justice everywhere. Not because it feels bad, but because it reveals a truth. Our lives are intertwined whether we acknowledge it or not. This is where radical welcome becomes more than nice. In the recent trainings, I have talked about the difference between nice and kind. You see, nice is that welcome in, but kind is a more moral stance. To practice radical welcome is to refuse the lie that some people are disposable. It's to widen our circle of concern, even when doing so costs us our comfort, costs us our control. This is why we are concerned with the lives on the front lines in Minneapolis. Our beloved UU leaders, and even if they weren't our personal friends, they are people in the direct line of a firefight that's not just for their rights, but all of our rights. And when the day comes for our front door to be under siege, they're a part of the we, right here as well, as we are a part of the we right there today. This is how we center love, friends. This is King's love, a love that's not passive, a public love that has its discipline. It's strategic and it's courageous. It confronts systems that deemed human dignity a way that is not for everyone. It throws people away, not seeing their humanity. And what we believe is that human dignity is human dignity for everyone. Because this love is not sentimental, and it doesn't avoid conflict. And it does not confuse peace with quiet. It's a public ethic, a force strong enough to tell the truth, brave enough to demand change, rooted in this same understanding of love. It's about choosing relationship and not retreat, staying present when the work gets hard. Radical welcome is an act of resistance. It resists fear, it resists scarcity, it resists the lie that safety is found through exclusion. We know what we're hearing is not the truth. Radical welcome says, we do not survive by closing ranks. That only makes us smaller. We survive by widening the we. It's not charity, it's justice. Now, we here in this room have taken those first moves towards radical welcome. We've had our trainings. And if radical welcome is real, if it is more than words, it will shape how we live together in this space. It will shape the voices who are trusted, whose pain gets centered, how we hold conflict, because believe it or not, there is always conflict, even if we say there's not. It will affect how decisions are made and how we share power. You see, it changes more than Sunday mornings. It changes our governance. It changes the risks that we're willing to take 7 days a week for the sake of love. It asks us not only to be welcoming people, but to be welcome to truth. As many of us know, King said, the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. But he was clear that it bends because people bend it. The beloved community does not arrive on its own. It's built again and again and again through courage and through sacrifice, through willingness to stay in relationship, even when it would be easier to walk away. And radical welcome is the way we take up that work. Not perfectly, not without misstep, but faithfully. This week, the call has arrived from Minnesota. I'm going to ask that we bring up the slide. This week, clergy in all forms received a call from the leaders of Minnesota to come, gather and show our solidarity and our insistence of welcome and inclusion, of a rejection of people being terrorized and snatched from the streets. This call echoes in my bones, as the call to Selma might have for others. I am one of the ones who cannot physically go. I suffer from asthma, and it is not in my health interest I become a liability. So I have used my financial privilege to help pay for another colleague to go who couldn't afford to go but had the desire. So I lifted that barrier. And friends, I carry a history with this. The minister of my home congregation did the same thing for James Reeb in Selma. It takes a lot not to go. Many of you have asked me, what can we do? How do we support? Where is it? It's been in your newsletter for several weeks. If you read the whole newsletter, especially at the bottom where it says side with love, there's a whole campaign of how to support. Mutual aid, organizations that need financial support, organizations that need people on the phone, writing letters, talking to congresspeople, legislators, helping organize in their communities. And this morning I wear the stole that I usually tell you in the beginning why I'm wearing, but I waited to this moment so that you actually get to see the stole that many of us, although not a mandatory uniform, as Unitarian Universalists, when we show up in the streets, we wear yellow stoles so that we can be seen and we can see each other. These are the types of stoles that in the news media you might see this week. Quite a lot of them. When I left our private chat channel, there were about 187 who were planning on going. This, the week before we gather as ministers in New Mexico for study. I would ask as I call some names here, I mean, you don't know many, but our UUA president is going and our vice president is there already. But our dear colleague called last night, Richard, gave me a call last night. He stood many times in this pulpit. He gave me a call last night to let me know that he's going. He'll be there. He'll represent with us in his heart. So I ask you to hold him in your hearts as you see this unfold in the next week. From our comforted homes, might we answer calls? Might we call legislators? Might we start making networks and trainings and finding them locally and showing up. That's what Unitarian Universalists do. We show up in solidarity at vigils, solidarity at trainings. This is a time when we say we, when there can be no walls around us as a church, as a community, as a neighborhood, as a state. There's no walls. We are we. Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. How will you join the resistance? How will you show the world around us that we are a people committed to radical welcome? May you find peace this week in your heart.